In the demon realm, the second fairy king Dahlia, and the giant master craftsman, Dubs, emerge to ambush the demons. Unprepared, the demons scamper to safety. Defiant, the lead demon attacks with fury, but gets swallowed up effortlessly and chewed to pieces by Dubs' puppet. The demons stare in disbelief. Desperate, and with no other options, another demon commands that the Endura, a powerful monster, be released. The fairy king Dahlia is unfazed. He summons his spirit spear and slays Endura with ease. After this victory, Dubs shoots a poisonous gas at the demons, which chokes them up and eliminates several of them. Only one makes it alive and staggers off. Elizabeth and Meliodas visit a waterfall, where they had been together in their previous lives. Meliodas recalls she was the daughter of a merchant, and she'd fallen into the water twice. Elizabeth agrees and reminds him how he jumped into the water to save her. Humored by this, Meliodas prompts her on how their clothes got soaked and they tried to dry them, and through that, they discovered a cave behind the waterfall. Elizabeth smiles, pleased, and adds that they had to build a fire and warm themselves with alcohol. Meliodas retorts that she got completely drunk, which Elizabeth laughs too, blushing. She wonders if that really happened. Elizabeth narrates how 6 months have passed since the 7 deadly sins fought the Demon King, and how she and Meliodas have begun going on short trips together. In those months, they had visited Elizabeth's father, King Butra, to tell him Meliodas wants to marry her, thereby becoming a king and her, his queen, much to the delight of her father. King Butra finds it too good to be true, though, and asks Meliodas again, to which he firmly affirms as the truth. King Butra, impressed, says they must arrange a ceremony for his crowning, as it's his first duty as a king, but Meliodas dissuades the idea. He says being a king is too annoying and doesn't fit him right. King Butra assures him it's only the first of several important ceremonies. He tells him about the appointment of holy knights, the negotiations with other states, and countless others. Meliodas isn't interested. Firstly, he wants a honeymoon and intends to take a casual trip around Britannia with Elizabeth, before proceeding to the coronation. King Butra believes a king doesn't have time for a honeymoon. Then when Meliodas says, as a result, he's uninterested in becoming king, King Butra screams in shock. He reminds Meliodas that lying to him, the king, is a great offense. Uncomfortable, Elizabeth calms her father. Just then Meliodas assures him he's merely leaving the preparations of the ceremony to him until they return from their trip. He promises to perform the ceremony when they return and to be a proper king. Elizabeth adds that she also wants to take the trip before becoming the Queen of Lyonesse, as she wishes to visit the nostalgic places her and Meliodas have been to together in the past 3,000 years. Back at the waterfall, Elizabeth tells Meliodas that once their trip is over they'll get married and become a real family, like they've always wanted. She adds that though they've been together for 3,000 years, it still feels odd. Meliodas looks at her in surprise. He admits feeling strange at the notion of having a family and confesses he doesn't know what a family should feel like. He claims he wasn't even a good big brother to Zeldris, bringing him only pain. Elizabeth encourages him that he can do better even now, as they have a lot of time ahead of them. She believes Meliodas will have a lot of chances to make things right with Zeldris. Touched by her kind words, Meliodas blushes, uncertain. Just as he's about to speak he feels a strange presence from the pool under the waterfall, a very powerful magical presence. Zeldris pops out of a river with a huge fish. He tells Gelda, his betrothed, that fishes in this world are smaller than the fishes in the demon realm, but still look delicious. Gelda is glad that he's in a good mood. Zeldris believes if he has a good meal his blood will taste better for Gelda. Gelda laughs, humored by this, and tells Zeldris he's cute for thinking this way. Just then Meliodas and Elizabeth show up, to Zeldris's disdain. He screams, incensed, and asks why they're here. Meliodas calmly tells him they're allowed to go wherever they want, then he asks Zeldris why he hasn't returned to the demon realm to become Demon King. Zeldris, still incensed, tells him he has no right to judge what he does. Upset by his manners, Gelda rebukes him for speaking so harshly to his older brother. She reminds him that they're only together thanks to Meliodas. Hurt by the harsh tone of her voice, Zeldris grudgingly asks Meliodas why he has come. Later, after Elizabeth confesses to Gelda that she's on a trip with Meliodas in preparation for their wedding, Gelda laughs at this and privately tells her that Meliodas and Zeldris are similar. She says Zeldris also suggested to her that they spend some time together before he becomes Demon King. Zeldris overhears this and denies putting it that way. He alleges he said instead that he wishes to enjoy his time with her before becoming the Demon King. Unconcerned, Meliodas says they mean the same thing. He adds that there's no shame in it if they had the same ideas. Zeldris, still furious, says he doesn't think of Meliodas as his brother and is disgusted at him. Shocked and hurt, Meliodas lets Zeldris leave. Just then, they all feel a strange magical presence. Realizing there could be an imminent danger, Zeldris and Meliodas go in search of the magical presence. They discover the demons who survived the attacks of the Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs, but are fatally wounded. Not knowing who their attackers were, the demon tells Zeldris that the demon realm was attacked by a fairy and a giant, and just then, he passes away. In the story of ancient times, before the splitting of human and non-human worlds, after 300 years the Holy War broke out again, and those that put an end to this war between light and darkness were the 7 deadly sins, namely, Dragon's sin, who is Meliodas, Serpent's sin, who is Diane, Fox's sin, who is Ban, Grizzly's sin, who is King, Goat's sin, who is Gowther, Boar's sin, who is Merlin, and Lion's sin, who is Escanor. Now in the Fairy King's forest, King Harlequin prepares for his wedding with Diane. Anxious, he changes hairstyles, unable to decide which is perfect for him. Ban tells him his necktie is crooked, and teases him about being afraid of getting married. He suggests Harlequin acts like he normally does, but Harlequin is too nervous. He says his wedding is one of the most important days of his life. He thinks Diane will hate him if he looks bad. When a fairy assures Harlequin that Diane loves him no matter how he looks, Harlequin, touched, recalls when he was traveling with Diane and became afraid, how she'd helped him and cared for him. Finally realizing this, he takes a deep breath and calms himself. As 2 fairies decorate Diane, some giants, other fairies, and human guests gather to join in the ceremony. The humans bring gifts from King Butra and announce their honor at being invited to the wedding. Humbled by their presence, Diane appreciates them but wishes Elizabeth and Meliodas could have made it to the wedding too. In the northern Britannia kingdom of Lyonesse, the people celebrate the upcoming wedding, as well as the crowning of the incoming king, Meliodas. Veronica teases her father, King Butra, about being a bit sad about the wedding, as a result of having to give his daughter away, which he admits as being true, but believes Caroline, his wife, celebrates it in heaven. Then he wonders if Meliodas and Elizabeth will really be back for the wedding tomorrow. Meliodas announces he has to visit the demon realm, to the shock of everyone. He's convinced something bad is happening there. Zeldris, in disbelief, asks why he has to come. Meliodas tells him he's also involved and can't ignore it. Zeldris disagrees, assuring him he can solve it on his own. Gelda asks them to calm down, but Zeldris, having none of it, wants to go alone. Gelda refuses. She insists on coming along, sick of waiting around. Reluctantly, Zeldris agrees. They find a hole leading to the demon realm. When Meliodas insists on coming, Zeldris snaps at him and tells him not to stick his nose in it. He accuses him of abandoning the power of the Demon King and has no right to fight for the demon realm. Unrelenting, Meliodas suggests helping Zeldris in the fight instead, but Zeldris, still stubborn, insists on solving the problem alone. Finally, they decide to settle by playing a game, in which whoever wins shall yield to the other. In the game, Meliodas prevails. Disappointed by the outcome, Zeldris groans, frustrated. Having no other choice, Zeldris accepts to have Meliodas and Elizabeth come along. Together they descend into the hole. At King Harlequin and Diane's wedding, the wedding officiant announces the joining together of the Fairy King Harlequin and the princess of the giant clan, Diane, that despite being of different clans they were drawn together by a strong love. He hopes their love will be eternal and that their union will forge a stronger bond between the fairy clan and the giant clan, as their wedding is the first of its kind. When he asks Harlequin to kiss his bride, both Harlequin and Diane blush, shocked and embarrassed. The officiant assures them it's a common custom. As the guests cheer them on, they finally kiss. Towards the end of the matrimony, Diane confesses to Harlequin that she wasn't sure this day would ever come, but she's, however, glad to have it here in the Fairy King's forest. Harlequin wishes everyone had attended, like Elizabeth, Merlin, the late Escanor, and lastly, Hawk. In Purgatory, Wild, a roaming pig, tells Hawk over dinner that he's like a little brother. Hawk, confident, tells him he was known all over as Captain Leftover's Hawk, as a result of being a foodie. Excited, Wild suggests they go hunt the Master of the Valley, but Hawk is unimpressed. He says the food in Purgatory isn't bad, but he misses leftovers. Wild doesn't know what leftovers are, so Hawk tells him leftovers are a combination of fermented half-finished food, making Wild drool in anticipation. Unable to contain his excitement, Wild runs off, as Hawk chases after him. Back to the wedding, King Harlequin tells Diane he intends to succeed the will of the first Fairy King, and just then, Diane remembers she's never heard about the second king, who is Dahlia. Admittedly, Harlequin also confesses not to know much about him either. He says Fairy King Dahlia disappeared from the forest by the time he was born. Suddenly, they start to feel the ground echo, as they check for what could be responsible. In northern Britannia, Jericho and Guela, 2 holy knights, patrol the city, surprised at everyone's excitement, but knowing it's as a result of the upcoming wedding and coronation. Abruptly, two kids bump into them and run off, enthusiastic. When the kids arrive at the walls of the city and begin to hear strange sounds and feel the echoes in the ground, they hold still, afraid. As the walls of the city crumble, bewitched giants and fairies spread into the city. While running away, one of the little kids stumbles. In a desperate effort to rescue the kids, Jericho is attacked by a giant, who claims they've come to punish the 7 deadly sins, as well as those who joined them in ruining the holy war. As a giant tries to stamp on Guela, Jericho sweeps into the rescue. She takes Guela into an alley and tells her the attackers are only after holy knights, and she believes they're being controlled by someone. Desperate to survive, they flee from the giants. Meanwhile, while traveling in the hole, Gilda suggests they take a rest, as she's starting to feel thirsty. Zeldris apologizes for not realizing it. While waiting for Gilda to recover, Meliodas catches a fish. Zeldris offers to cook it, but Meliodas refuses, insisting he must do it himself to make amends for eating Zeldris's fish earlier on. When Zeldris finally has a taste of the fish, he vomits, revolting. Angrily, he forces the fish into Meliodas's mouth, which also begins to vomit. As they continue their travel in the hole again, Zeldris and Meliodas argue over the fish. Touched by their attitude towards each other, Elizabeth confesses to Gilda that she's glad to see them all talking. As they approach the entrance to Demon Realm, Meliodas tells Elizabeth to protect herself against the Demon Realm's miasma, which she does. He warns her not to get lost during the shock of entering and grabs her hand as a precautionary measure. Arriving in the Demon Realm, they shockingly realize that the miasma has been weakened and the realm destroyed. While observing the damages, Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs emerge, calling the Demon Realm their new base. Dubs tells Meliodas that they sent their large group of allies to attack their friends on the other side. When Meliodas asks what their goal for the attack is, Fairy King Dahlia accuses him of ending the holy war and has, therefore, come to punish him and his allies. As Fairy King Dahlia attacks Gilda, Zeldris saves her just in time, then a battle ensues. As the battle draws to a conclusion, Dubs captures Meliodas and Elizabeth in his staff of imprisonment. In the Fairy King's forest, bewitched giants attack other giants and fairies. Gil and his companions are able to escape. While taking a breather, they realize Northern Britannia is also being attacked and that King Buttrick could be in danger. In a desperate attempt to shield themselves from an impending attack, they get blasted to Northern Britannia, just in time to prevent some bewitched giants from forcing their way into Lyonesse. In the Fairy King's forest, King Harlequin tells the giants and fairies that the other giants and fairies are under a spell, but he knows a way to stop them. He creates a shield and commands the Seed of Awakening onto them, which triggers them out of the bewitchment, except for a few. Realizing their weapons are equally under a spell, Ban magically commands their weapons away. After completely snapping out of the enchantment, the giants and fairies are informed that they were being hypnotized by someone. One of the giants reports that Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs appeared before them, and that's all they remember. They cry, regret, and apologize. In Northern Britannia, the bewitched giants hammer on Gil's shield. Just as they break it down, King Harlequin and his companions appear and cast off the spell from them. Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs visit Cath Pallid, who says that although Meliodas, one of the 7 sins, is gone, the others are still powerful warriors, god-killers, who defeated the Demon King. Unmoved, Fairy King Dahlia says anything can happen. When he gets served poisonous alcohol from Endura's excretion, he merely sets the cup aside as nothing. In the celestial realm, Lord Mael revives the goddess race after 300 years. He tells them the holy war is over and they don't need to hate the demon clan anymore. Zeldris, who has been unconscious since after the battle with Dubs, finally wakes up, thanks to Gilda. She tells him that in order to save him from the rubble, she had to take a lot of his blood and convert it to energy. Dejected and ashamed, Zeldris declares he has no right to claim the throne of the demon realm, thereby implying that he's not strong enough, but Gilda advises him not to show such weakness to the few demons who are looking up to him, and just then, the demons welcome him out of his unconsciousness. Zeldris tells them he believes Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs are not powerful enough to weaken the miasma. He suspects some other forces could be behind it. When Zeldris asks for the help of the demons to fight Fairy King Dahlia and Dubs, as well as rescue Meliodas, they declare that they can't because Meliodas eliminated the Demon King. They ask him what was his goal coming to the Demon Realm. Undeterred, Zeldris says his goal is to become the Demon King and to create a peaceful demon realm for everyone. He assures them that his father, the former Demon King, had no love for them, so he's decided to be a different king. Meanwhile, Meliodas and Elizabeth are still stuck in Dub's staff of imprisonment. Elizabeth says she recalls Fairy King Dahlia had no interest in the Holy War, and that Dubs also created the coffin of eternal darkness to end the Holy War, so it seems unlikely that they'd fight over the war that was long gone. Meliodas also admits he finds it strange. After trying to break out of the prison and failing, Meliodas surrenders. Elizabeth encourages him, then as they share a sweet moment together, Zeldris breaks through the prison. Astonished and impressed, Meliodas thanks him and asks how he broke the prison, but Zeldris refuses to tell him. Outside, a battle rages on between the Fairy King Dahlia, Dubs, and the demons. Just as Dubs and King Dahlia prepare a ferocious attack, Meliodas and Zeldris swoosh in and repel it. The demons ask Meliodas why he's fighting for the demon realm, and he tells them the holy war is over and there's no need to spill blood anymore. Just then, he and Zeldris attack Dubs and King Dahlia. While they fight, Gilda heals the wounded demons, and as the battle concludes, Zeldris and Meliodas prevail, with King Dahlia and Dubs vanquishing, much to everyone's awe. In Lyonesse, King Butra thanks King Harlequin and his companions for coming to their rescue. King Harlequin believes King Dahlia and Dubs were controlling the bewitched giants and fairies, but then he also believes they were being controlled by someone else. Meanwhile, while fleeing for his life, Lord Mail falls into the midst of the seven sins. He warns them about a problem that threatens his clan. Shortly, the supreme deity emerges. She says she's seen everything that happened through her daughter, Elizabeth, while she was sealed away in sleep. She admits being impressed by the defeat of the Demon King but believes it was wrong to end the Holy War, as it goes against the nature of the world. She commands the goddess race to attack the seven sins, alongside whoever supports them. Imminently, a war ensues. As the seven sins battle the supreme deity, they come to a stunning realization that physical attacks don't work on her, similar to how magical attacks failed to work on the Demon King. As the supreme deity prepares one final attack to destroy the seven sins, Meliodas, Elizabeth, and Gil whisk in and repel her attack. The supreme deity accuses Meliodas of luring her daughter and ruining the holy war. Mockingly, Meliodas asks her if that's all she has to say, but this only upsets her. Mustering her powers, she attempts to attack Meliodas, but then discovers she's being restricted by Zeldris's ominous bind, as he has snuck up on her. Quickly, Zeldris asks Meliodas to finish her off. Darting off to strike her, the supreme deity mocks Meliodas by asking if he intends to eliminate his lover's mother the same way he eliminated his father, the Demon King. Meanwhile, at the Lyonesse, King Butra asks Margaret if it's painful for her to know her real mother is the supreme deity, but she tells him no, that King Butra is her only real parent, who has loved her regardless of what she is, and that she loves him. As the battle hopelessly rages on, Elizabeth interferes and asks her mother to leave their world. Disappointed, the supreme deity says it's not the right way to speak to her, but Elizabeth is unconcerned. She blames her mother for casting a cruel spell like eternity reincarnation on her. She's only thankful to Meliodas and her other companions who helped her break that wheel, and now that the curse has been lifted, she is released from the burden of being her daughter. She asks the supreme deity to stop causing more strife, as she'll have no other option than to fight her if she continues to attack her friends and companions. Unmoved, the supreme deity tells her she doesn't understand what she's fighting for. She tells Elizabeth the story of how the demon and goddess clan are bound to be in eternal conflict, as continuing the holy war is the only way to maintain the balance in the world. Elizabeth, confused, wonders how the holy war created a balance. With a determined look, Meliodas tells Elizabeth that when he was possessed by the Demon King, he saw into all of his thoughts. He says the Demon King and Supreme Deity were born with a mission to continue the eternal conflict, as they considered the holy war a game. Arrogantly, the Supreme Deity calls him an inferior creation, and he has no right to criticize a god's intentions. As she attempts to seize Elizabeth, Gilda sweeps to her rescue. The Supreme Deity declares to destroy them all and start a new holy war. As Meliodas charges for another attack, the Supreme Deity tells him that if he had gained the power surpassing the Demon King then he could defeat her, which he hadn't. Meliodas agrees. He admits that if he hadn't given up the power, they wouldn't struggle so much to overcome her. However, as a result, he alongside Zeldris are able to fight side by side as a team, and with this, they attack her with a deathly strike, finally prevailing. As the Supreme Deity vanquishes, she warns them that by choosing to prevent the holy war they'll be bringing forth an age of chaos. Undeterred, Meliodas assures her they'll decide their own fate. Zeldris, determined, adds that they're done playing her games. Later, when the battle is over, Zeldris and Meliodas fall to the ground, exhausted. The people cheer for them. Finally, Elizabeth and Meliodas have their wedding. Meliodas, still reluctant to take the crown, stutters to King Butra, but the king is having none of it. Furious and impatient, he wears it on Meliodas. As the wedding goes on, Elizabeth and Meliodas share a sweet kiss. While preparing for the bouquet, Wild and Hawk fall out of the sky and flatten King Buttra. Elizabeth fidgets in shock. Unbothered by the state of King Buttra, Meliodas exchanges pleasantries with Wild and Pig, while the king remains underneath Wild, dizzy and exhausted. Later, after the wedding and coronation, Elizabeth calls for Meliodas. When she sees him with Zeldris, she chuckles, relieved. Outside, Zeldris calls Meliodas weird, that despite being non-human, he becomes the king of a human kingdom. Humored by this, Meliodas tells Zeldris that he'll also have it tough ruling, but wishes him good luck as the new demon king. Zeldris thinks it sounds weak and would rather not be called that. Meliodas ignores it and asks if he'll get married to Gelda, to which Zeldris arrogantly denies being interested in the idea of marriage, but even without doing that his heart belongs to Gelda. Unsurprised by Zeldris's attitude, Meliodas calls Gelda a good woman. Zeldris stutters, flattered, but arrogantly turns away and prepares to leave. Hiding his real emotions behind a false facade, Zeldris asks Meliodas to visit him in the demon realm sometime, to Meliodas's awe. Clouded by arrogance again, Zeldris tells him he would want him to help rebuild the castle and town, then he bids him goodbye.